It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. 53-year-old Paul Doyle is charged with 7 offences after a car was driven into crowds attending Liverpool's trophy parade. The fight for survival inside Gaza. We film with British surgeons trying to save the youngest lives. And as dozens more people die in airstrikes in central Gaza, we follow paramedics driving through the front lines of a death zone. Also tonight, a reprieve for Donald Trump's flagship economic plan after a court temporarily paused a ruling that would have overturned his sweeping tariffs on the rest of the world. It's Liz Truss all over again. The Prime Minister accuses Reform leader Nigel Farage of proposing a mad economic experiment. Plus, the story of Akram Mohammed, who died when he was just 15 weeks old, with his family fearing the conditions in their home contributed to his death. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. The alleged driver of the car that ploughed into crowds at Liverpool's victory parade on Monday has been charged. 53-year-old Paul Doyle will appear before magistrates tomorrow facing 7 charges, including causing grievous bodily harm and wounding that relates to 6 people, 2 of them children. From Liverpool, our North of England correspondent, Katerina Vitozzi, reports. And just to warn you, her report does contain images of the incident.
This is Paul Doyle, 53, from the suburb of West Derby in Liverpool. Today, he was charged in connection with this. The moment on Monday night when a football victory parade became a scene of fear and confusion.
The Crown Prosecution Service has today authorised Merseyside Police to charge Paul Doyle, aged 53, from West Derby, Liverpool, with offences of dangerous driving, causing grievous bodily harm with intent, wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, and attempting to cause grievous bodily harm with intent. It is important to ensure that every victim gets the justice they deserve. The charges will be kept under review as the investigation progresses.
The charges, as they stand, relate to 6 people, 2 of them children. Police say the youngest child hurt was just 9 years old.
I fully understand how this incident has left us all shocked and saddened. And I know many will continue to have concerns and questions. Our detectives are working tirelessly with diligence and professionalism to seek the answer to all of those questions. When we are able to, we will provide further information. Merseyside Police is determined to gather as much evidence as possible to ensure that every avenue is explored.
Investigators say they are now going over hours of footage from CCTV cameras and from the mobile phones of the thousands of people who were there on Monday night. And with many of these clips still online, police again appealed for no undue speculation. Paul Doyle will appear in Liverpool Magistrates Court on Friday morning. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News in Liverpool.
To Gaza now, where Hamas says it's studying American proposals for a new ceasefire. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said Israel agrees to the deal on the table, which would reportedly halt the fighting for 60 days. Today, an airstrike on a market in Gaza City killed at least 11 people. We'll have more on that in a moment. But first, our special correspondent, Alex Crawford, has been speaking to those trying to help evacuate some of the sickest children caught up in the fighting. A warning, her report contains images of their injuries.
I just have to show you this little guy. This is my favourite little guy.
It's tough viewing. Hatem's only 3, covered in burns from an Israeli airstrike on his home.
It's a massive burn for a little guy like this. He's so adorable. His eyelids are burnt, his hands are burnt, even his feet are burnt.
The voice you're hearing is British surgeon Victoria Rose, who's trying to save his life and many others.
Well, every day there are more and more children that come into our operating theatre that have been blown up. So it's getting harder and harder to get him a slot in theatre to have the dressing changes he needs.
Hartem's family photo album shows him as a happy, healthy boy before the bombing. His father, who was a teacher and seen here with him, was killed alongside his pregnant mother. Hartem is the family's sole survivor. His life now hangs on a thread, his condition swinging perilously from hour to hour, with Dr. Rose monitoring every step.
Unfortunately, he hasn't been too well recently. He's developed some bleeding from his intestines.
His guardian now, and the man who's hardly left his hospital bedside, is his grandfather, who gave us permission to use the pictures of his grandson. He's working with a British charity who's trying to get permission to airlift Hartem and other children to safety and specialist care in Britain. In more than 20 months, the UK's only taken fewer than a handful of the injured from Gaza, just 2 children.
What did children do wrong to suffer such injuries, to be burned and bombed? We ask God to grant them healing.
Look away now if you're squeamish. This is 1-year-old Karam, and he's the other baby identified by the British charity as needing emergency help now. He's suffering from Hirschsprung disease, a birth defect, but easily corrected with the right skills and equipment. His family's fled the bombings multiple times, moving from tent to tent in conditions which make it impossible to keep infections at bay.
No matter how much I describe how much my son is suffering, I wouldn't be able to describe it enough. I swear I am constantly crying.
Gaza's children are suffering horribly right now, with local health officials saying more than 16,000 have been killed, and children making up the vast bulk of their patients, according to the British surgeons inside.
What do you say to a 7-year-old girl who's already had one limb amputated well above the knee and now has to have her other leg amputated above the knee as well? She's 7 years old. She'll be confined most likely to a wheelchair for the rest of her life.
A young girl picks her way through the fire after an Israeli airstrike on a school being used by dozens of families as a shelter. More than 30 bodies were recovered from this. The little girl lost her entire family, her parents and siblings, and is scarred both physically and emotionally after witnessing their deaths in the inferno. I saw a lot of fire, she says. A big, big fire, and I was scared of it. So many children suffering so much trauma. The Israeli military continually justifies these bombings, including this one, by saying the shelter was harbouring Hamas fighters without providing any evidence. The British charity Project Pure Hope insists there's no justification for attacks which continually see the youngest hurt and maimed. They've written to the Prime Minister and the Foreign Secretary to allow Britain to do its bit to help Gaza children.
Most of the people affected by this catastrophe that's unfolding in Gaza are children. And children are the most vulnerable. They have nothing to do with the politics. And we really just need to see them for what they are. They are children, just like my children, just like everybody's children in this country, and we have the ability to help them.
Those on the ground in Gaza say it's way past the point of taking urgent action.
Every time I come, I say it's really bad, but this is on a completely different scale now. It's mass casualties, it's utter carnage. We are incapable of getting through this volume. We don't have the personnel, we don't have the medical supplies, and we really don't have the facilities. We are the last standing hospital in the south of Gaza. We really are on our knees now. He does, he looks really good.
The surgeon's skills and determination are what's keeping Hartem alive right now, but it'll take much more than that to save him and the thousands of other children suffering in Gaza. Alex Crawford, Sky News.
Israeli forces have been stepping up their attacks in recent days. Any form of emergency service or infrastructure left in the Strip has been completely overwhelmed, not least the paramedics tasked with helping tend to those who've been caught in deadly airstrikes. This next report from our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, contains distressing images.
This was seconds after the Israeli military hit a marketplace in Gaza City today. People can be seen writhing on the floor in agony. A few try to sit up, but collapse again. There was nothing the medics could do for the victims when they arrived. Bodies were heaved onto stretchers, their mutilated arms and legs twisted. Body parts are picked from the debris and wrapped into a sheet. Just another day in Gaza. The Gaza paramedics are on the front line of this war every single day. The relentless Israeli bombardment puts their lives in danger as they rush to the scene of airstrikes to help retrieve the dead and wounded. Our team has filmed with the ambulance crews in Gaza City over a number of days this week. It is Tuesday afternoon, and an Israeli strike has hit a building in the city. The fire is burning, but everyone has managed to escape. 4 people have been wounded. No one was killed in this strike. These paramedics are based at Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. Even back at their base, they aren't safe and can't properly relax. The hospital has come under attack many times. Also, there simply aren't that many of them, certainly not enough. And now, to make it worse, fuel for the ambulances is running low because of the blockade. The war is nearing its 20th month. They've been on call for more than 600 days now. The endless rescue missions and high number of civilian casualties take their toll.
The scenes we witness, children, severed limbs, the wounded, what affects us the most is the children. Sometimes after responding to an incident, you begin to imagine the injured children as your own relatives. These images get mixed in your mind.
The roads often become blocked by the fighting, as every day new areas are designated Israeli military combat zones. The paramedics need to adapt their journeys. Getting it wrong could be a lethal mistake. Paramedics and rescue workers have been killed during the war. Alaa al-Hadidi was hit in a drone strike. He was buried by his colleagues. Every one of them knows it could have been them.
Safety? No, there is no safety. Right now, there is no safety. When we respond to an airstrike, the drones are overhead. In the first round of airstrikes, they targeted my colleague in one of our vehicles.
It is around 1 a.m. on Wednesday morning. A 3-story building has been hit with 20 people inside. There is chaos as the team arrive on the scene. The body of a young girl in her pajamas is immediately handed to them. She's dead. Standing on the ruins of the apartment block, they pull another body covered in dust from under a massive slab of concrete. Another one dead, this time a young man. In a few hours, it'll be dawn. A new day. The paramedics will have to be ready to go again. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
With Israel's government saying it's accepted the Gaza ceasefire plan formulated by US envoy Steve Witkoff, the question now is whether Hamas will get on board too. Speaking to Sky News, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy spoke of his hope for a truce.
We have been saying for months that we need to get back to a ceasefire. That means that the Israeli government needs to accept one, and of course Hamas need to accept one. We've been working with our US colleagues. I hope that we're about to see a breakthrough that is not just a ceasefire for a few days, but is a sustained ceasefire that brings an end to some of the horrors that we're seeing out of Gaza and sees the return of those hostages.
Well, live now to our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle in Jerusalem. And Ali, we've seen some very powerful reporting from both you and Alex Crawford tonight there on what's happening inside Gaza. But is there now some hope tonight that a ceasefire might soon be agreed?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely hope and expectation, but also a bit of confusion as to exactly how the ground lies. There's been a lot of speculation building over the last couple of days, but I have to say within the last couple of hours, things have started to move quite quickly. The Americans have put together a new proposal. Really, it's a proposal that is based on former proposals, but tweaked to try and bring the two sides together, finally. We understand from the White House, who said tonight that that had been, in their words, signed off by the Israelis before being passed to Hamas. So it looks as though it has Israeli approval. We don't know what Hamas's answer is at the moment. From what we gather, it would be a 60-day ceasefire, during which stage, very early on, 10 of the living Israeli hostages would be released and 18 bodies of the dead Israeli hostages would be released. IDF forces would partially but not fully withdraw, and there would be no guarantee that this would be the end of the war, and that for Hamas will be a major sticking point. But we think the agreement will give some form of confidence, or attempt to try and give some confidence to Hamas, that negotiations will begin genuinely and seriously during that phase to try and bring a permanent ceasefire about. So we wait to see what Hamas has got to say. The rumours is that they will accept it, but with reservations, but they haven't yet delivered their verdict on it. But because of the Israeli military operation, Hamas is in its weakest position as it has been for the entire war. And there'll be a lot of pressure on them internationally, from Arab countries and from within Gaza, to accept this ceasefire deal.
Indeed. Alistair, thank you. A US court has granted what might be a temporary reprieve for Donald Trump's flagship economic plan after it paused a ruling that would have overturned his proposal to impose sweeping tariffs on the rest of the world. Let's speak to our US correspondent, James Matthews. So, James, Trump's tariff plan on, off, now back on again. But where do we go from here?
Well, it's a reprieve, Gillian, but very much a temporary one, according to the ruling by an appeals court. Today, it's placed a pause on the halting of the tariffs. That buys Donald Trump some time, a pause until the 9th of June, so a week on Monday. Ultimately, it will be fought out in court. But, you know, for Donald Trump, the timing of all this could scarcely be worse. Engaged as he is in tariff negotiations with the EU, with China, and numerous other countries. The markets are happy, I'll say that. This morning, they showed a bounce. Not so happy is the White House, which again has railed against the judges in this matter, as it has against judges in so many other matters. Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary at the White House today, criticising what she called unelected judges inserting themselves into the presidential decision-making process. Ultimately, Gillian, this is all heading towards the Supreme Court. The highest court in the land will make its ruling on what the lower courts have been assessing. And those lower courts are reining Donald Trump in, placing restrictions on his political ambitions for this country. It will all go to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, with a number of high-stakes decisions to make, not just on tariffs.
James, thank you for that update. The Prime Minister has launched an attack on Nigel Farage, describing Reform UK's policies as a mad experiment. During a speech this morning, Sir Keir Starmer criticised Reform's economic plans, comparing them to those of former Prime Minister Liz Truss. Nigel Farage made a series of pledges earlier this week, including reversing the winter fuel allowance cut and scrapping the two-child limit on child benefits. Here's our political correspondent, Amanda Akas.
A Prime Minister on the attack, with one clear target.
That's the question you have to ask about Nigel Farage. Can you trust him? Unlike Nigel Farage, I know what it's like. Nigel Farage stands for none of this.
On a visit to St Helens this morning, Sir Keir Starmer was hoping that linking Nigel Farage to Liz Truss would dampen the appeal of Reform UK, a party he's now treating like the official opposition.
We're once again fighting the same fantasy, this time from Farage. The same bet, in the same casino.
Reform UK say you're running scared of them. This is a speech that was very defensive, wasn't it?
Let me be really clear about the difference between this Labour government and Reform, because we know for a fact what happens when politicians say they're going to spend billions of pounds and it's unfunded. We tried that experiment with Liz Truss. Nice to see you. See you later. Bye-bye now.
Much of the North West is Labour heartland territory, but Reform UK are attempting to stage a land grab. They came a strong second in many local constituencies, like here in Warrington North. And Runcorn and Helsby, which they won in a by-election a few weeks ago, is just down the road.
Labour's poll lead has long gone for the chop, with Reform UK now some 8 points ahead.
I do think he's got a good chance. I mean, obviously, like the whole Keir Starmer thing, he's not delivered on a lot of his promises.
He's very close with Donald Trump, I've seen, and I kind of like Trump, even though he's got big opinions and stuff, he gets stuff done at the end of the day.
The economy's ruined anywhere, and obviously we need someone to take charge and not ruin it, so...
You don't think Nigel Farage is the one?
No, definitely not.
It's thought Reform's promise to give everyone a £20,000 tax-free allowance could cost up to £80 billion. Parties say they'll make cuts to pay for it.
The issue with Liz Truss, there was some interesting stuff in the budget with regards to trying to spur growth on, which Reform will do, but she made no tax cuts. Nigel has laid out how we're going to save between 300 and 400 billion pounds from the exchequer spending as a result of decisions he will make.
Big promises are easier to make in opposition than to keep in government. But underneath the industrial relics of the past, voters in the North West are listening closely. Amanda Akas, Sky News, Warrington.
Lawyers for Andrew and Tristan Tate say the brothers will return to the UK to defend themselves against rape and trafficking charges. The charges against the online influencers were authorised by prosecutors almost 18 months ago, but weren't announced until yesterday. An international arrest warrant was issued by Bedfordshire Police over allegations that date back to between 2012 and 2015, which they deny. Police have found a body in the search for a missing teenage girl who fell into a reservoir. Emergency services were called to Batings Dam near Ripondon in West Yorkshire early yesterday afternoon. Specialist officers are supporting her family as formal identification takes place. A man is missing after rock and ice from a glacier crashed down a Swiss mountainside, burying and destroying 90% of the alpine village of Blatten. Its 300 residents had already been evacuated since part of the mountain behind the glacier began to crumble. The parents of a 15-week-old baby boy who died in February have told Sky News they fear the condition of their social housing contributed to his death. Akram Mohammed developed breathing problems and was rushed to hospital but couldn't be saved. An inquest will be held in the summer. His parents are speaking out amid a huge rise in complaints about substandard social housing. Rachel Venables reports.
He was wearing this before he died, but I didn't wash it, because it's got his scent. I don't want to wash it.
Months after his death, Ayat still clings constantly to her little boy's last baby grow. Her son, Akram Mohammed, was just 15 weeks old when he passed away in hospital after a history of breathing problems.
They didn't say directly he died, but they said to me, you can come and touch his head now. No, I was saying, please, can you try again? And they said, sorry, we can't. Because they said at this stage we can't do anything anymore because we need to stop.
An inquest will be held in the summer. According to the family lawyer, a pathology report suggested he died of acute pneumonia due to a late-onset Group B strep infection. But he fears the state of their crowded and mouldy housing association flat played a significant part in Akram's death.
So this one is around a bit. No one help us.
The cause of death is unknown and an inquest has been set up, with a coroner expected to rule on how and why Akram died later in the year. And did it smell? Did it feel damp?
Ooh,
It's very rotten smell, very strange smell.
You're sick, completely like disease.
Would you scrub and clean the walls?
Almost every week, once a week.
The family say they repeatedly asked the housing association, Notting Hill Genesis, for help, but the problems kept returning. An independent inspection just after his birth found mould in the kitchen, bedroom, bathroom and living room, and claimed the landlord was in breach of its duty to ensure the property is fit for human habitation.
We've noticed that when he was 1 month old, so I've noticed that in the night, especially in the night, he had like difficulty breathing. So he would breathe like this.
When the child was strong, he was big and very healthy, but he was drowning, you could hear it, he was drowning in fluids. They'd left the casket not sealed, and they opened it for me, and he looked so cute. He was like pudgy, like a little cherub.
Savas spent years trying to get the family better housing.
If I knew that child was going to die, I would have ripped that family out as soon as that baby was born.
In a statement, the head of Notting Hill Genesis said, "We know that this is a complex situation and will continue working with the relevant authorities as they conduct their investigations. No determination has been made by HM coroner as to the cause of Akram's death." The Mohammeds have been left a broken-hearted family of 4, unable to go home and awaiting a coroner's verdict on what happened to their beautiful boy and to whether his home was partially responsible. Rachel Venables, Sky News in North London.
Let's return to the situation in Gaza now, and hundreds of high-profile figures, including stars of stage and screen, have called for an immediate ceasefire. Earlier, some of them, including the actors Steve Coogan and Juliet Stevenson, held an event in Westminster where the names of children killed in the war were read out. Our lead world presenter, Yalda Hakim, went down to speak to them.
Abdel Rahman, Hakam, Jamal, Abdul, Shah. Those are not just statistics, they're real people, they're real children who had lives, who died, and it's to some way go to some extent to humanise them.
Do you think the international community, the UK, France, Canada, condemning what's happening is sufficient?
But certainly more material things need to be done. We need to stop sending arms to Israel right now. I think that would be a very important signal.
Mohammed Ziad Hassan Abu Aida.
When people talk about being frightened to speak out, I don't have a lot of patience for it. You know, we are human beings. Everybody has to imagine what it would be like to be living in that nightmare, that hellscape, and act as human beings. It's a moment in history that we cannot overlook. Everybody needs to step up.
Maher Asad Maher Abu Lashid, 5 years old. Mahmoud Mahran Muhammad, 5 years old.
Do you think increasingly people are saying enough is enough?
I think it's tragically, it's taken the mass indiscriminate killing of innocent people to get to this stage, but it would have been difficult just to stick your head above the parapet. In fact, it was 18 months ago, but I don't think it is anymore. I think more and more people are realising that it has to stop.
Steve Coogan ending that report there. That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight we're joined by Mark Wallace, CEO at the Total Politics Group, and Kezia Dugdale, Associate Director at the Centre for Public Policy at the University of Glasgow. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Metro, its headline, "The End of the World is Nige." We'll be right back, so stay with us.